When you're in the thick of the action, the animal is doing something, you take a picture. You don't always think about what might happen. It's always at the back of your mind that it might be dangerous, that it could go for you, but you don't linger on it. When you photograph an animal, it's an ambassador for the entire species.
Wildlife photographer Philippe Henry has traveled the planet. He has been to Texas many times to photograph alligators and intends going back there very soon. But first, he must prepare for a new adventure less than 500 miles from his home in Montreal. Gaspésie National Park beckons with its rolling landscapes, woodland caribou, and moose.
It's a very interesting place because it's so varied with its mix of woodland and Arctic environments, as well as Mont Albert, where a remnant population of caribou live. There's also Canada grouse, hazel grouse, lynx. So in the same national park, you have all this diverse wildlife. And for me, it's a wonderful playground.
After an 8-hour drive, Philippe reaches the outskirts of Gaspésie, where the region is recovering from an early storm. While there seems to be little snow along the way, Philippe is concerned that conditions might be more difficult in the mountains.
Good wildlife photographers have to be ready to tackle any weather conditions and to know the environment so that they can get close to the animal. They need patience and to be physically tough.
For now, Philippe must spend the night at Saint-Anne-des-Monts in the hopes that the roads will be clear enough the following day. In the early hours, Philippe goes to check on road conditions. But he has to face facts. It's going to be impossible to reach the mountain summit. The woodland caribou habitat will be inaccessible until next spring.
Unfavorable weather conditions can present major obstacles like several days of heavy rain or snowfalls or whatever. You have to work around them.
Philippe decides to go in search of another species, one that lives lower down in the forest of Gaspésie National Park. When he reaches the Mont Albert shelter, he meets Italian Mark, a nature guide who is very familiar with the habitat of the North American moose.
Now we're really approaching the characteristic habitat of the moose. We can see signs that they've been grazing here.
I've seen signs.
Tracks.
Is this a place where they meet up? Any signs here?
Maybe a bit higher up. There's a place where they often gather in winter.
Moose are pretty hard to get close to, though. It's difficult to get a good photo of one in this park. There's a lot of groundwork. If you compare Gaspésie with, say, the Gros Morne National Park in Newfoundland, the moose there are on open land, on big peat bogs, so it's much easier. The different environment makes them much more inaccessible here.
Philippe's patience is finally rewarded. The moose are here, just a few yards away.
You don't have much choice when it comes to getting close to a female and her young in a place like this. You just have to creep up as slowly as possible. trying not to make any noise. We can see that they aren't too timid, although they seem a little anxious. You always try to advance slowly, then stop and observe. That reassures them. You take your time, you stop for a bit, you break a branch or two, look at the right, look to the left, you keep your eyes on them. Now they feel a little safer and you can get a few shots. I often spend a lot of time working on a particular species, but it'll be another year or two before I get some really good photos here, by coming back during different seasons.
Of the many photographic projects Philippe has completed, some were spread over several years. As a discreet observer of wildlife, he sometimes has to take risks to obtain a good shot. After a short stay in Gaspésie, Philippe Henry is back on the road with his boat and his photographic equipment. Over 35 hours later, he reaches his final destination in southeast Texas, home to a large population of alligators. This is Philippe's 5th visit since the year 2000.
I had heard about Texans, how they're very difficult to get close to. But I found them to be really nice people. You have to get to know them. But once you've got a Texan friend, it makes it much easier to work in the region. A Texan friend is for life.
Every time he comes back to Texas, Philippe is happy to see his friend Bill Howell, who has a long-standing interest in the world of reptiles. He knows this territory like the back of his hand. It's full of rivers, bayous, lakes, a perfect habitat for alligators.
Here we go.
Oh man, that's a beautiful day.
What is that?
Hey, look at that, something is moving.
Whoop.
Oh, there's the gator.
She's in there.
She's inside. Oh, that's good. Hey. Take care.
See how deep it goes back up in there? She's way back up in there.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is, you don't often find a den, only when the water level is very low. Everything around is dry, only the entrance to the den is covered by water. As the water level keeps going down in the persistent dry weather, the alligator digs even deeper to stay closer to water for longer and be able to raise its young in the den.
Look how deep that is. Whoa, I just bumped something. I bumped something. It moved.
What can it be?
I don't know, but it's big. It just moved back.
Yeah.
So they have a place they can relax in and take shelter during the hot weather. When it's completely dried out here, the female will take them to the big pond around 200 yards away. That's dangerous for them because the big alligators will try to catch them and eat them.
Most people try to do everything in a hurry. And taking pictures of wildlife is, it's like making gravy. You can't hurry the gravy. You have to stay with it. Philippe is the man who'll spend weeks sitting on a nest to wait for it to hatch to get that special picture of mama taking the alligators to the water. His collection of alligators pictures is something that no one else has.
Philippe publishes his photographs in specialized magazine and children's books. But he does not only do photo features. He likes to accompany his pictures with information about the wildlife.
There are two types of photographers. You have agency photographers who distribute their photos and hope to make a living, and then you have photographers like me who produce a complete subject in a report with text and pictures. The job of photography has a message you want to get across with some written work to complement the photography. You have to popularize the subject to grab a child's interest, but without making the language too simple. There's the pleasure of writing, trying to capture in the best possible way what you've seen, so it's a whole exercise.
For many years now, Philippe has occasionally been using a video camera along with his regular photographic equipment. The additional work involved demands a great deal of patience and effort. During a recent expedition in Yukon, inspired by its wide open spaces and solitude, he took the opportunity to hone his technique.
I try as often as possible to stage manage myself. It takes a lot of time and energy because there's a whole lot of preparation required. You have to find the right place to set up the camera, start it up, then while the camera's rolling, come back. You often have to redo the scenes as well. I just spent the night in a hide. It was comfortable. I was in a very warm duvet. I woke up and had the feeling nothing had happened overnight, but I must have slept soundly because there are fresh tracks on the ground. The bear that came by this morning must have been very discreet and made no noise. I'll stay in the hide for another hour or two before going back to the camp and having breakfast. I'm hungry. Sure, in wildlife photography, you click and you hope to get the photo. The paradox is that the click lasts 125th or 1,000th of a second. It's over with very quickly, but the viewer doesn't appreciate the time taken on the ground to get the photograph.
Patience and solitude are key components in the life of a wildlife photographer, as is danger. But whatever species he's photographing, Philippe Henry always respects the animal, trying to capture the most natural behavior possible. This way of working has allowed him to capture some outstanding photographs and video footage while working in Texas. Since early 2000, Philippe has spent the equivalent of 3 years in Texas photographing the alligators and wildlife in Brazos Bend State Park. He is working on a scientific book about alligators with biologist Louise Hayes Odom.
Brazos Bend State Park has the largest inland population of alligators in the state of Texas, and moreover, it has many water bodies that are interspersed with foot trails. You can walk along the trails and see the alligators going about their everyday life.
Oh, look at it.
Looks like he's headed back in.
Yeah.
The time spent in Brazos Bend Park has allowed Philippe to illustrate certain types of alligator behavior that are very hard to capture. Among them, the way they communicate with one another.
When the alligator communicates, it sends a very low-frequency signal through the water, which travels long distances. A muscle mass pulsates, causing tiny drops of water to gush forth. So I wanted to photograph this, and I was also interested in filming certain alligators helping each other to catch fish. So the female was in the arc of a circle, the male pushed the fish towards her while she caught the fish and then, in turn, helped him catch fish. We observed this a few times. This type of behavior has been very seldom discussed. It's something new that will be presented in our books along with photographic illustrations.
Checking the alligators and watching them, we realized there were more of them.
Located around 50 miles from Houston, the Brazos Bend State Park is a protected habitat. The public can come to observe alligators at close quarters, and Philippe has made it his playground. But a constantly growing new menace seems to be surfacing.
I believe it's overpopulated, and there's going to have to be controls done before there's a problem with the public. Now the population has gotten over 400 alligators in a small area, and they're competing for territories. And as competing for territories, they'll compete with anything from people, tourists, dogs. The larger alligators, you can hear them bellowing, so you know that you have a problem when you hear something that large. And the state record is under 15 feet, and I believe that there are some that will reach and over the state record.
The alligator, by and large, is not as bad an actor as his cousin, the crocodile. However, he still has the potential to hurt you, especially if you do something foolish or dangerous, or both.
That sound is the sound you hear when two alligators that know each other well meet. There's a greeting that manifests itself through grunting, while the hissing is anger. There's something he doesn't like, but he's not too put off by the other's presence.
To produce good photos, it's vital to know the species well. It allows the photographer to know exactly when to take the right photo. But the lure of a unique shot can sometimes lead a photographer to forget what he's dealing with.
He looked at me, he stayed there a moment, and I figured I could shoot something interesting, and the best way was to lie on the ground and prepare my camera with a very wide angle, very close to where the creature was. And then it started to move towards me. Being on the ground, it must have thought I was vulnerable prey, and it came at me full tilt. I had the time to shoot off a dozen exposures on rapid fire as I rolled away to my right. I don't think I could do that again. I'll try not to. So that's adrenaline. It's hard to describe. It doesn't happen very often, but it was exciting. But I didn't know how it would work out.
Before leaving Texas, Philippe visits his publisher near Houston. As well as taking photos, he likes to work on developing a mock-up.
Until now, I've never been disappointed because I've always had some input into the layout. Often the editor's ideas didn't tally with those of the person in charge of the mock-up, and I didn't really like the results. But in the end, by talking it through, we managed to come up with something that we think is perfect. I'm a wildlife photographer, but I'm also a reporter. I often head for the light, one body and a wide-angle lens. When I'm in the city, I try to show the crowd with a fresh eye. Sometimes I need silence and to mingle with the crowd, which also allows me to try a different type of photography. Then Philippe Henry is surrounded by people, and that's a different Philippe Henry.
Traveling around the world and encountering wildlife in far-flung places makes one ponder the fate that we humans have in store for our environment.
I have to say I'm very pessimistic with regard to protection of the planet's last remaining wildernesses. Whatever they say, there's no real resolve to protect them. For me, it's a no-brainer. We need to protect what remains of the natural environment, but that's kind of utopian, isn't it?
Even if he claims to be pessimistic, Philippe hopes that his photographs will help to change things. It's what inspires him to hit the road again. And this time, he's off to Ecuador to find the speckled bear, a species threatened by extinction.